like to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting for Thursday, May 24th, 2008. If we could ask for a roll call, please.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Armstrong? Here. Councilor Ensel?
Here.
Councilor Kretzer?
Here. And at this time, I'd invite any members of the public to come forward if they would come to the mic. That's more or less for recording purposes, for any comments they care to make to the committee. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I'm Lil Cassidy, just here with Animal Rescue and Welfare Services in case anyone has any questions for the request that we have put in.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 2, reports from department representatives and discussion with counselors. First item is the fire department overtime expenditures. If we could ask the chief, did you want to move up or speak up? Whatever you're comfortable with.
You need to be behind the mic. You can just say it.
Overtime is up due to some vacancies in the department that are driving the overtime to keep our daily manning at 6.
At 6?
Yes.
Okay. And did the captain openings, did that reflect on overtime as well?
Some. We're working on promotions now. We made one promotion. We're getting ready to make a second, and then one lieutenant moved up to captain, so that position will be filled in also.
So the bulk of the overtime expenditure went to staffing for the 6, or would it have gone to the open?
Recently, the staffing for the 6. Previous to that, the bulk of the overtime was for officer out of title replacement.
What means what?
Which means if a captain is off, that it get replaced by a captain that came from somebody.
Okay, so there's 4 captains, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And you had 2 openings?
Yes.
And one's filled?
Yes.
One's yet to be filled?
One's yet to be filled.
And the 2 veteran captains, we'll call them, are they of retirement?
The 2, I have one that's eligible for retirement, the others are not.
Okay, so you could have one pending?
One
retirement?
pending.
All right, would that then reflect into the overtime once again?
It would, but I don't, I'm not thinking that this captain hasn't conveyed to me that he's gonna retire anytime soon.
Okay, and the 6 staffing, how long is that? Is there a projection on that time frame? How long that would go to? Or?
Not at this time.
All right. And that's been going on since when?
The 6 is our daily minimum.
Right, yes.
2008.
Okay. But the overtime expenses for that, has that been since 2008?
Yes, that's our number, that once we get below 6, then we will call overtime to staff necessary equipment.
Now, is that staffing chief, is that 2 down
2 at
south
Station
end and
Right.
4 at the
And 4 at Station 1, 2 of which do cross-staffing of the ambulance.
Okay. Do you think there'll be a need for an increase in overtime revenues? A request is for such?
Possibly. See how things in a couple months.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, you might as well stay up. Well, we kind of covered that. Number 2 was fire department recent hirings. We kind of tied that into that. So we've had 1 recent hiring with 1
Yeah, it
pending.
was a recent promotion.
It was a promotion.
Right.
Right.
So that has created a vacancy as a lieutenant.
Right, in which would mean we promote somebody into a lieutenant's position.
So then will that and then create another opening, basically,
Down
the line as a
entry-level,
firefighter?
yes. Right, entry level.
'Cause it just-
Right.
Right.
It's a feeder system, correct? Okay. Well, we might as well move on to number 3. Save you some steps. Discussion of new ambulance with associated costs.
I'm working with the mayor on that right now for his capital project. So we'll have more information. I received a bid. I just see what we would come in at.
You mind if I bring up something?
I think, yes, it's probably what I was going to bring. In terms of
Go
the
ahead.
ambulance,
Yeah, go ahead.
what was it discussed publicly from?
Yeah, Irish tar bells. Just-
Yes.
Yes, I was
Yes.
thinking about that too, yeah.
Okay. That
About
came,
doing a refurbish or re-chassis?
yes, or one that's more or less like a transport ambulance rather than a full,
Transport ambulance, the problem we have is they won't hold up to the call volume. They're notorious for going down for repairs. Those are for doing over-the-road, long distance. They're much better for that, but for our stop and go and our city driving, they just don't hold up.
What standards are you using?
okay.
What standards?
As far as comparing one to the
What
other?
data?
Is this like professional data?
Right, I
or
go
your- or
through,
your
yeah, I
opinion?
go into, the gross vehicle weight, what it can handle per axle. I know that the one we have now has a 2,000-pound higher rating than what we previously had for the front axle because we were having front-end issues. We discussed with the mechanics what he thought the best option for us was. Went through the manufacturer and went with that. We had looked at it before. The other issue is with the transport ambulances is your workspace. So when you have, an ambulance is a rolling emergency room, and when you have 2 or 3 people trying to work in there,
Right.
you have to have a certain amount of space, A, for equipment and personnel to work efficiently and safely in the back.
This might be a little bit tangential, but I know your experiences were influential in DPW choosing to pay Prospect last year. So much emergency traffic trying to get to
Right.
the hospital.
Well, not just us, but there's also other ambulances that come in from the northern
Yeah,
area
a
that
lot of-
utilize.
Beekmantown, Saranac, Morrisonville, they all come in.
374 and then
Ellenburg, Dannemore.
Right.
So if you ever have any
Yes,
advice,
sure you did.
do you ever have any advice on what you think are the roads that we need to look at? Your advice would be really valuable in us doing that triage to make sure the roads get up to snuff as well.
Then there's Cornelia.
Yeah,
Right.
we're discussing that right now too, for
Good.
that very reason.
Good.
So the new ambulance discussion surrounds what? Actually,
Timing, we're working on timing and expenses, and we're working on a capital project with the mayor, or what he's expecting, and we'll have further discussions on that.
okay, would this move the cost, the discussions to the point the cost would be incurred this year, or they would maybe go into next year?
We're still talking about that as far as production date, if we choose to go that route.
Okay, and the ambulance, is it still out of commission?
Yes,
Or-
it's uninspectable at this time.
So that leaves us two?
2,
What happens if we need a third
I would call in mutual aid.
blade? Okay. Okay.
And we're also having discussions about the potential of moving to a second ambulance service, which we then would undoubtedly need at least one more ambulance in that
Right.
scenario, but we'd also have some revenues to associate with it too.
Yes.
A second
we-
ambulance service?
Mhm.
What does that mean?
Means we would run a call 1 and a call 2 ambulance. So we would staff 2 ambulances to be available for any emergencies in the city. Currently, we don't answer approximately 500 calls a year that we're requested for, and mutual aid comes in and takes care of that for us.
Do we have,
With
How
the,
many?
with the 3 ambulance,
no, go ahead.
with the 3 ambulances, if we do purchase the third ambulance, there is a rotation so that not one ambulance or 2 ambulances.
Correct.
There
Right,
is
you
a-
would be rotating for your 2 front lines. One we bought last, the previous purchase had a 2-year full bumper-to-bumper warranty. So we would take a new one and put that front line so that your main running would be done by a vehicle that is
Still under warranty.
warranty. And then once they became utilized, then we do a month-to-month rotation. So that we would average out our call lines with.
Do we have like projections as far as cost and use?
Initial to do the exact that we have now would be 184,000.
And is there anything to equipment
No.
after that? So that's something of a cost-saving projection then? Originally, what was
The
good?
last ambulance, we also had to take into account that there was a stretcher. Our stretcher needed to be replaced, and a stretcher is $12,000. So that was built into the cost previously, but that is not a necessity at this time.
But this is This is Prudent Shopping, is it, 184?
We went off the Galveston Houston Association
Right.
as we've done before,
Mhm.
which is a national
Mhm.
bid, right? It's basically a state contract for us.
Okay.
As we put the business plan together for possibility of a second ambulance, what kind of revenue could you expect from 500 additional calls per year? If presumably you have the staffing to also.
Right, so if we were, the thing, we won't be able to base it on 500 calls a year, we'll have to base it on 400, because there are gonna be times that we're out on multiple emergencies and will not be able to handle that call. So, projection is 400. Our previous revenue income per call, when we averaged it out, was right around $200 to $205, due to our new billing and our being more prudent with some things. We bumped it up to $340 a call, so it'd be $340 per call times 400 was what the projected revenue would be.
Another 120. Now, we would also incur salary, correct?
Probably have to have a higher staffing level, or more overtime, but this is the kind of business analysis we want to try to put together to make that case for you all.
Chief, do you know when that plan will be put together?
We can work on it soon with the mayor.
That's great. Yeah, I look forward to seeing it.
Okay.
We'll get that to walk.
Yeah, you can,
Thank you.
do a duet from the chairs if you want, or if the,
Musical chairs.
item number 4, Police and Fire Department are conducting a review of the response to the windstorm a couple of weeks ago and is used to assess emergency response preparedness. They will be reviewing this incident to use it to prepare for an emergency that will require county, state, federal assistance.
Quite a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
So, to summarize that, after the windstorm, I wanted to assess how the police department responded, as well as the other departments. I put out an email to the other department heads, and they expressed no concerns. I would have expected no concerns about the response from the city departments. But I'd always like to make sure that we didn't miss anything, at least from the police department's aspect. So since there were no concerns expressed, one of the things that the fire chief had talked about when I got promoted to chief was to really do an analysis of the emergency preparedness from our standpoint. Just because there's a county emergency
Right.
operations, it would make sense to have a little bit of a framework for a city one, without reinventing the wheel, so to speak, but just be up to date on incident command.
Okay,
So that's what we'll be doing, probably monthly.
okay. Very good. Good luck with that.
Would you be willing to report to this committee monthly on what you find out, or?
I don't know if that kind of analysis is what, I mean, I would certainly bring up what we're discussing. That might be the better thing to bring up. I don't
Okay.
know if we'll have like a measurable, we certainly talk about it, definitely.
Okay,
And we can use this committee to do that in. So if you want to submit that for the agendas as things come up, why don't we do it that way? All right?
Certainly.
Okay.
sounds good.
All right. Okay. Item number 5, Police Department. Further efforts, discussion to address parking enforcement, quality of life issues by possibly using a hybrid parking officer, code enforcement officer, still at the civil service new job duties level.
Also a mouthful.
Yes.
So this is one of the mayor's initiatives that, I've tried to really help the mayor with what he's trying to accomplish here. And it really is to have a dual role person to combat some of the complaints that we receive, to make sure that there's a little bit of shine downtown, while still accomplishing the mission of making sure that parking is available for customers to the city of Plattsburgh.
Plenty of shine today.
All right.
That is for sure.
Now, has there been a discussion on how these will be prosecuted? Because these would be violation level offenses. Those are usually prosecuted when the police hand out a violation by the police officers themselves down at city court and not by the district attorney's office. If we have one of these code enforcement officers, likely they can't be showing up every day in Plattsburgh City Court if there's a lot of these violations. Has there been any thought given to that and how these cases would be prosecuted?
At this level, not a great deal, but we have talked about it. It is a consideration for sure. The frequency at which that would happen is very, very low. At least for like a parking trial, which are very uncommon.
Yeah, I noticed your parking violations, there was 0 tickets dismissed. It doesn't seem like people are really finding it. They're just putting them in, paying it, putting it in the mail.
Isn't that something that Dean is working on, and you have the public hearing 1 week from today to change the code to give us that greater flexibility, if I'm not correct?
To amend the local law?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's more the person being able to, but if I understand what you're asking is a person that would be prosecuting it. This person would be the prosecutor in a sense.
Okay.
That's not a heavy lift though. It would be something that could be trained very easily in my opinion. Or without a great deal of effort.
And I'm sure the city court could put them all in like 1 day a month or something.
So yeah, I mean, city court works very well with non-attorney prosecutors that they make it very easy to prosecute.
Joe, if you cite somebody for a broken window, how does that get processed?
Well, if they repair it in the time frame that we give them, then that's handled through our office. So we go to court 3, 4, 5 times a year. We handle it ourselves. If it's a difficult case, I may confer with Dean first, and he comes with us every now and again. But most of the time, it's just ourselves.
So it's not a lot. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And also in the proposed change of the local law, the parking enforcement officer may make or provide testimony at a traffic violations bureau hearing. So they would actually be going in.
It would be the same mechanism.
Right. And it also then goes into the housing code inspector and how that would be handled. So, yeah, all that's under consideration. Okay. All right. So what's civil service? That's our next, I don't want to call it obstacle.
They're just now waiting for us to change the local law before
Okay.
they can do the final processing of that.
So still working very closely with the mayor on
Okay.
trying to accomplish that.
Okay. Okay. And the last report we're looking at is number 6. From the police department, exploring partnership with Alliance for Positive Health to conduct a hypodermic needle take-back day. We have received indications from citizens there are not enough collection points for disposing of used hypodermic needles.
So during the most recent DEA Drug Take-Back Day, sponsored by the DEA, one of those opportunities for people to dispose of unwanted medication, which is a serious public safety risk. Numerous people came up to the officer that was manning that station and expressed that the repositories for needles were either unavailable or full. And they brought them to the police department and had nowhere else to put them. So they expressed that there was a need for more availability of this. So the officer suggested to me that we try and have a quote-unquote needle take-back day. Just really sponsor the solely for needles. It's a significant risk. But to do that, now there's a little bit of a stigma with the police department doing that. It's, you know, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to catch? It really does not come from that. It really comes from solely the public safety standpoint that discarded needles are a public safety concern. So I was introduced to the Alliance for Positive Health when I was promoted to chief. They're an excellent organization and very, very receptive to the idea. So another member of the police department and I met with them this week, and they agreed to explore something like this in the future.
And when it says take back day, is that one day or would there be like a certain day a month, or how broad does this go?
It really would, at this point, just be one day, just to see, you know, is there truly the need, and to evaluate it further to see if there is more of a need in the future.
Okay, and the repositories, who maintains those presently? I should know that, but,
The Alliance for Positive Health.
Oh, they do?
Does most of that, yes.
okay. And they are, do you know the number of those in
I
the
don't have
city?
that number
Okay.
now.
Do they run needle exchanges in the city?
I believe, don't quote me on that, but I know that they have some involvement in that. I should probably know, but I'm drawing a blank.
But I see what you mean. The concern you were referencing before was that, you know, if someone finds someone on the ground, they could bring them to the police, but someone that's using them for perhaps illegal purposes might not want to go to the police station and turn in needles.
That's exactly what I'm trying. Now, I should also point out that there are legitimate purposes for hypodermic syringes, and that's something that we also recognize, that just the possession of a hypodermic syringe does not make you a criminal. But there is a need for disposing of it properly.
But there is a public health law violation for possession of a hypodermic instrument.
For purposes outside of its normal use or prescribed use. Except if you are part of the needle exchange program, you are exempt from that.
Still get arrested on it, you can get it dismissed, but yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Worthwhile
Thanks,
endeavor.
Chief.
Mhm. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 3. There's one this evening. It'll be brought forward from departments to be approved by the committee and recommended to council. Request from Animal Rescue and Welfare Services for feral cat control rescue adoption efforts in the city of Plattsburgh in the amount of $3,000. ARWS, which is Animal Rescue and Welfare Services, will provide an account of expenditures at year's end, as well as a report to the conditions of the feral cat population in the city.
So moved.
Second?
I think that, didn't you have some thoughts on animal control that you shared? Did you share that with this committee already with regard to whether it would come out of your budget?
I can repeat those if you'd like.
Well, this will go on to this evening's agenda, is that correct? And we can discuss it then? Okay. We'll ask for your input then. Give you a few minutes to turn the figures. All right. Number 4, old business. Any old business to discuss? Hearing to be none. Number 5, new business to be discussed. Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Counselor
Do a roll.
Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Towdle?
Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes before the work session begins. You could begin early, or you can take a little recess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Let's begin early. Okay. Let's call the work session to order then, the common council tonight.
Mr. Mayor, make a request, we go into executive session,
And the subject.
personnel.
And do we have a second? Second by
Second.
Councilor Dowdle. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Take that.
I'll make them in a second.
Absolutely. Okay. Pat, glad to do it.
I wouldn't say that, but You gotta brush all the stuff that you've already.
How can you make fresh?
Let it grow long and cut it.
So I got most of that done, sent it to you, and said, I'll ship you more. So most of it's done, and we should take me half an hour to finish the rest.
So what's the working on today?
I got one quick.
Well, the item that I shot today, there was a conversation with some people that are concerned about some states that are doing policy changes. Every farmer has a coverage.
Oh, really?
But it sounds like New York and Vermont are not among the states. Because I managed to question well, really it's New Hampshire and Maine. But our station is a single that's hit.
So it's a.
So
After that, a lot of times you move them slowly, 2 cuts a year, some farmers do 3, most of them. Actually, farmers are starting to break down.
But, you know,
Here's a guy, where's the question? You got it.
some people are
Silage, so
don't know if there's any.
Okay, because it's wet all the time. They don't make
And
the other
things,
That's it, it makes soil.
different. They grind it up. See, over here, they call it silage here.
Well, I've only done
Instead of putting it
one.
in
All
oil,
the time.
they'll grind them up.
That's where,
They put it in those big tubes.
instead
Those
of.
goes in a lot of tubes that you see it. Some of it grass and some of it was.
Over there, they,
So.
I don't know how they do it, but they put it on the charts instead. Because they, unless they get a real, that's somewhere it's usually rain all the time, so they can't get dry again.
Okay. And that way.
The equipment.
Right, so what they do is they would call into that studio, and that studio only records, you know, I was only recording.
So they can
But,
interlace the.
yeah, and then you send them the sound. You set it up so that, yeah, yeah, you set it up so that they can hear, you know, the questions coming from.
But it doesn't disturb.
But it doesn't disturb the audio, so that they record their audio, meaning they're there. So then you send them the audio and they just kind of slide in, it's like, you know, play the voice.
No, I can visualize it.
And I've only done it once before. And I was like, I'm a nervous wreck because this is big.
You don't want to have something fail.
I just know, because
So,
I know, and how it is.
you broadcast it, we broadcast it.
No pressure, right?
And then it's come in, and then you have
That was what I was thinking. I said, all the wives.
It's gonna make it smaller, it's gonna be, if you're gonna use a baler to pick them up, it's harder for them to.
Because the way my studio is set up, I had to give him the headsets and stuff. I had to give headsets. I couldn't- I don't- And so there was one car that he was talking
The cows actually like, my cows like that more than if you give them a veil. I take my grass fields and I make them over fence and the cows.
I don't pretty much talked to somebody the other day and said, oh, you know, listen to this and you probably I can at least have a conversation. It's even offset from the tractor, so I can the old one I had, you could actually pick it up and take the car off of it, dump it. This one, you pull it across and it dumps it, so I have to pick it up. Anything that we can't put our hands the clock change
there's new concepts and new terminology.
Not yet. You would promise
your longevity to have those conversations instead of just being like, that's one of those things that I'm conscious of too. Even in the police world, very quickly, how public perceives things, you don't you'll get passed by. We're trying to change your belief system on, you know, the turn of a Supreme Court. Yeah, I guess we're doing this now. Yeah.
But I think it's funny that if you have Facebook for
Well, no one will.
better or preferably lower. Once I get rid of it, the mayor's gonna make a decision, and then it's gonna be a record.
I think that I would say the same thing. I was more like an ignorant kid, whereas like, that's, I like I'll do one better. I was watching Seeks being online. It was on billboard. Yeah. I was just mesmerized by like the whole procedure and all how they call for the amendments, the votes, and what request number.
Work session right now.
My 18-year-old saw this too.
No, they left. All right, get pizza. Don't be back here
That's my second Prime Minister's questions. That's awesome. I would.
I really want to pizza. That's what
You get to hide behind a press secretary. And you can just.
I don't like saying this close over here because you can see this video. What? Yeah.
They call her out.
Usually I'm out of the shot. Did you lose an earring? Did you see over there?
No, I tend not to wear them because I'm wearing headsets all day.
I was wondering because it would have been, oh no, it could have been Monday. They had cleaning or something. One of those was Monday. And then it says, the Board of Assessment was Tuesday, so it could have been either.
Yeah, I used to wear headsets and necklaces and stuff, but the earrings, they would just, because I'm wearing headsets all the time, my earlobes would just get massively irritated. And then necklaces, they get clogged.
Yeah.
If it's not the headset cable, it's the mic cable. So I kind of gave up on it. I have put it down.
Yeah. You swear to have your kids Is that where they are? Oh, okay. I was wondering why you were saying.
So how are you doing?
Good.
And they are very graciously stayed.
Yeah, I told him you wouldn't talk for a few minutes.
He came over on his motorcycle.
Yeah, I know.
Look at it at the end. I think it was so cool.
That's right.
I have no idea what you're mentioning. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I feel like I'm watching a grade class go back from the
Wrong scene, sorry.
You're doing a lot of that here.
Stay there for now. I'm going to get the email today. Councilor Dowdle, do you want to bring us out of executive session? Did you move to go into it?
Pencil did.
Councilor Ansel?
Yes, at this point, I take us out of executive session and no decisions were reached at this time.
And what did you talk about in the session
Personnel.
personnel?
Thank you. Any other items on the agenda you'd like to have a little bit of additional discussion? I know we've got Karen on, we'll be going over budget 5-year plan today. We could use this time as you would like to do that as well.
With council's permission, I'd be happy to do that. Sure. Is this thing on?
This isn't an airport.
Apologize. Looking for this spot.
Councilor reports?
Somebody else wants to speak in the meantime, go right ahead.
I can do a council report. Just in regards to the governance strategic planning committee, Councilor Armstrong and I have had with our committee a lot of momentum this past week. We've been working with kind of regional experts who have either founded ethics boards or ethics committees, who are working with us on trying to see if there are, efficiencies that could be taken care of potentially county-wide, a collaborative approach to ethics, not duplicating any services or replicating anything that doesn't need to be replicated, and also being able to, potentially work with a new model if that's the committee's decision that would. Well, am I so far so good?
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering if we can't be more specific.
Well, I guess if you want to talk about specific,
Well, I mean,
we're in process and.
Yeah, we are. I don't think there would be any objection about saying who we met with.
I was going to say, we can drop names.
Yeah.
We met with Tom Moran, and then had subsequent conversations with Sarah Rowden, both who have had a lot of experience, in this area. Both of them seem to think that there could be some efficiencies found if we, share services countywide as far as ethics are concerned. And it's going to be a kind of a nice collaborative, inclusive approach where, different stakeholders in different municipalities will be able to participate. Mm-hmm. And then, if it is decided that there is one, kind of governing ethics board, just, reviewing any type of things throughout the municipalities, that maybe that body would be, engaged, being able to work more regionally rather than very locally.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that struck me about, Dr. Moran's comments was, and just for those of you who may not know, he was the former director of the Ethics Institute at SUNY Plattsburgh, and he had served on the town ethics board but in his experience there, felt as though there really weren't very many cases that came, up. And
Let's say just in the county or just in the town.
yes, so that's when he began to work on the idea of proposing a county-wide ethics board. And there's been an extensive amount of work done, already in preparation for that. Previous Mayor Calnon had expressed interest, and Dr. Moran had already talked to the mayor, our present mayor, Reed. So, as Joshua and I talked to him, we felt as though there had been a great deal of consideration, and there seemed to be a huge opportunity to take advantage of this. And the way in which he described it, of course, nothing is set in stone now. It's all in process, as Joshua said, was that this would be an advisory board made up of an array of people from throughout the county. And according to our charter, we have three representatives that would be on this board if we were to go with that model. All three would need to be residents. There could be an employee, there could be a counselor, and an outside person. So the appeal to me would be to have this larger body that would review cases as they are referred. And I think there would be the potential for a great deal more objectivity, with that kind of framework. So I'm really looking forward to working with Dr. Moran. He's very generous and knowledgeable, and I think we can really come up with something good.
Is there an existing ethics board
for the
in
county? Countywide, and that we're dealing and pooling some of the resources from these already existing bodies who have connections with people elsewhere even that have even more experience. So we're kind of working with I think everyone who's in the know as far as how these things are formed locally.
And what I gave you that evening was from the county. That was what I presented to you, that when it went to the governance board, that was the county. I got it from the county. But this would, what we're talking would also include the county.
Exactly. It would represent all municipalities in the county who so chose to
so it kind of takes it out of your own house.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
But you're also still there.
Right.
Exactly.
Everyone's involved.
Because in the city, you need to have one elected or appointed official. I don't think it's an employee, and I think appointees.
Appointee. That's what it was.
Or elected, that's us, or an appointee. I think there's just a couple.
And just
so it minimizes, and it has to be met with the approval of the council and the mayor. Correct. So that could be a process unto itself. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. If we were
is
to
there
use
a buy-in to this, or how do you sign up?
Well, that's part of what we would need to figure out.
It would be kind of maybe taking different models either from the county or other municipalities, and kind of finding this hybrid that works for everyone, and anyone who is in any capacity involved with the municipality in Clinton County would be able to have representation.
Right.
If we were to go with this model and choose to be a participant in this model, it would require a charter change.
Yes.
So I've heard an ethics board mentioned a couple times in here, but I haven't heard anyone really describe what it would do, how it would operate. I guess it's decided, and
it's kind of just reviewing, case by case, if there are issues of conflict of interest, of any other type problems, either with elected officials or it could really be a guiding body for any organization that could come before them.
Right. That does necessitate the establishment of a code of ethics, for which there are many templates statewide. Principally, they have to do with conflicts of interest.
And it would be something that if this was to come to fruition, this new body, all of the municipalities in the county would have the same
standards.
Well, the city has a code of ethics
Yes.
currently. It's had for a number of years. And it's actually established in
Oh,
our
yes.
code as well.
Right, it's code, it's 52 and 53 of the city code. 52 is the ethics and
So this
actual
would just be,
board is 53.
I guess
so-
new standards or combined standards for review.
Right, and it would, as Councilor Armstrong said, require a charter change.
Would that require all the other municipalities to have the same ethics code?
It would be,
There'd have to be
I
a
would think
template
so.
for all
we're still in process
participants?
and kind of putting all the particulars together. So as soon as we have kind of a framework of a model, then we will present it to you.
I mean-
As soon as something is-
I understand your reticence to disclose details because, you know, I mean, it
It's
is
in
very,
process.
it's embryonic at this point. We just had the initial discussions with Dr. Moran, and we're just
But it-
kind of trying to get it off the ground.
It seems though like that with these, you know, the support from these local experts, you know, the process is gonna move along, you know, I think pretty quickly.
I think so.
it can.
I think we're new at the table, but I think they've had something underway, have they not? Dr. Moran and others?
Yeah,
This-
he's formulated plans already.
He's got the umbrella up, he's
He
just waiting for
does.
people to come under. Okay,
That's
all right,
good.
good.
He's very engaged.
Good.
And then other than that, I don't think there's any, you know, major updates.
Okay.
Did you find what you
I
needed?
found the files I need,
Okay.
so we can go ahead if that's okay.
We burned enough time.
Thank you for that report.
Yeah, sorry it was so lengthy.
No, it was good. I'm glad to hear that kind of thing is going on. Okay. Beth printed out for you Beth printed this out for you, so feel free to refer to it. But this is an update of our 5-year plan work that we've done for a month now. And we're just about ready to seal it and vote on it tonight, I hope. So here's what we've done. We've agreed on underlying assumptions. We've agreed on a rate of inflation. We agreed at property tax base increase of 1%. There will be no new bonding until 2023, so that rate stays at 2.26%. Our accomplishments again so far, we've agreed to continue to monitor healthcare expenses. Firefighter arbitration costs will be closely monitored. We're going to monitor revenue opportunities such as ambulance revenue and serial ambulance project. The amount we set aside for separation pay is agreed to be sufficient. We will monitor these things. I finally figured out a vehicle to do it. We can do it at our monthly finance committee meeting. We'll ask for updates on all of those issues that we're monitoring, or anything else for that matter. Okay, let's see, healthcare expenses. We agreed to monitor, let's see, that's, okay, I think that's it, yes. We're gonna monitor revenue opportunities and land interest. So I wanna say great job, council. We've taken this very large elephant and eaten it one bite at a time. And I really appreciate everyone's participation. Our assumptions, just to review, to deliver cost and value, deliver structural balance, that is a balanced budget, grow our fund balance, and create a sustainable budget for many years to come. So how did we do it, meeting our assumptions with what the work we've done so far? Cost and value, you can see some of the actions we've taken. Structural balance, again, some of the actions we've taken as a council. We've had tremendous success. Our unassigned fund balance growth. We We set a goal of 5 to 10% a couple of years ago, and we're actually going to meet that 2020. The fund balance then begins to drop, but it stays within the council goal until 2023. So for this 5-year plan, we're okay. Sustainability, as I said, our deficit spending has ended. Our fund balance is improving, but it could be better. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. So I gave us a grade on what we've done so far. As far as delivering cost and value to the taxpayers, I give us an A. Structural balance, I give us an A-. Unassigned fund balance growth, a B, and sustainability, a B-. Now, how did I come up with those grades? And that's where I have to refer to the chart, our chart. So, if you look at J46 at the bottom, let me make this a little bit larger so everyone can see.
Bottom right.
Bottom right, hit the
Plus.
little slider bar there, right? Okay.
Okay. Want to see the chart down below?
See, how do I,
I'd probably drag it.
You can just push the minus sign, or actually, yeah, drag the page probably.
Aren't you looking at a previous version there, Mike? That's
yes,
the
we
version
are
5.
looking at a previous version, but we will look at a new and improved version in just a moment. We have managed to create a fund balance this year of $236,077. That was from a projected loss at the beginning of the year of $2 million. So that's a huge improvement. And you can see that going forward, try to make this just a tiny bit larger. Going forward, we will create a fund balance every year until we get to the year 2021. That's in J45. So that's the reason I gave us a B- for sustainability. We have to go back to our scorecard here. Sustainability, B-. So we're good for a few years, and we actually, create and grow a fund balance, but then we start to lose a little money. So what I have proposed to you is that we look at a slightly different chart, and I'll pull that up for you to look at now.
While you're doing that, Mike, I just want to note, based on your grading, we as a council earned a 3.34 GPA this semester, right?
I was hoping one of our editors, thank you, Peter, our educator would tell us what our GPA is. That's not bad. Is that cum laude?
It's cum nada.
Cum nada, okay. Well, we do have a way to improve our scores, and in this particular model here, what has changed is to try to find a little more savings going forward, okay? So that I had previously, if you look at the field that's highlighted now, that's L44, I had previously proposed that we try to save $1 million next year, but that may not be realistic, so let's bump that back to $650,000. If we can do that, you will see that what happens to our fund balance down here on line 48 is that we create a fund balance and are able to maintain it way out into the future. So that makes us much more sustainable. But I will caution the council and department heads and the mayor and everyone else, none of this is going to be easy. This requires a lot of financial discipline, and we've certainly demonstrated a lot of financial discipline prior to this, but This is the kind of thing we're gonna have to do to deliver the taxpayers a balanced budget, which they so badly want us to do. A couple other features here, and we're almost out of time, so I'll finish with this, but we are able to bring the tax rate in with this model at about 2%. So again, these are things to be very, very proud of, and some more things to be proud of. By 2020, we will have saved the average taxpayer $3,497 each. If the next administration shows the same fiscal discipline going 10 years into the future, their savings will be $11,000, almost $12,000. By the end of a 10-year plan, savings will be, for the median homeowner, we predict $21,014. So again, council, I don't know how many organizations take their fiscal responsibility as seriously as you have and respond to the needs as quickly and seriously as you have. So if we can adopt that latest model I showed you, then, whoops, I'm sorry. If we could adopt that latest model, then we can certainly get an A on just about all of those measures. And we can certainly talk about these things more during the council meeting.
Of course, I'll take your directives and then create my budget for next year using your baseline expectations as an assumption. It's going to be very hard. We have to work together. I'll have to work very closely with all the department heads, as you all know, to try to figure out how to do this. But I take your directives very seriously, and then we'll revise, see how we do this year. We have been performing better than expectations last year, as you all know. If we can make a little bit of headway this year and perform better than expectations, maybe give us a little bit more leeway to not have to cut so extensively next year. But it's an iterative process, but the guidance you're all offering is very helpful. And as I've done last year, I'll want to produce my budget early, and hopefully you all can affirm or create your own budget early as well, so we can start accumulating some of these savings as early as we can as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other items you'd like to deal with during work session? Or may we go into council session now and begin with Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call, please.
Mayor Reed.
Present.
Councilor Armstrong. Here. Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Councilor Dowdle.
Here.
Councilor Ensel.
Here.
Councilor McFarland.
Present.
Councilor Kretzer.
Here.
Just some brief comments. Last week I spoke a little bit about my visit to Meadowbrook and some of the challenges that our senior citizens are facing and trying to remain in the community. And I think your comments, Councilor Kelly, if we can save our retirees and our senior citizens $21,000 over the next 10 years, that obviously makes it much easier for them to remain in our community and not migrate to some other community. But I think I briefly mentioned that last week I also attended the honor flight. It's the last honor flight I believe that Pan Air will be sponsoring. We'll miss them in our community dearly, but we are gratified that the new airline coming to town will hopefully continue in their tradition as well. One of the things I discussed both at Meadowbrook and at that gathering with veterans, I met a fellow at Meadowbrook, as I mentioned last week, who fought in 3 different wars, World War II, Korean War, and the Vietnam War, and served in the Navy. He was concerned about losing his home. He felt he couldn't stay ahead of property taxes anymore. And I'd like to bring to you an idea that can assist in that problem without ultimately costing the taxpayers any money. Again, it's a wonderful idea brought from Vancouver, Canada. I'm sure I'm going to hear a little bit about that, but in the community there where my mother lives, she is given an opportunity to delay the payment of her taxes until she eventually sells her home. So the city ends up receiving those tax revenues just delayed and with interest, but it allows her to stay in the home in an area where housing prices are escalating dramatically. We may consider trying to develop that sort of program in this city for our veterans, our retired veterans, to allow them to stay in their homes. And again, this isn't a tax exemption. This is simply a tax deference. But it would allow people to stay in their home and pay a relatively low tax rate until they ultimately sell. The proceeds from that sale would then go back to reimburse the city with interest. The city would presumably be able to borrow for any funds that we have to wait a few years for, but it'd be fiscally neutral for the city. So I think we should consider adopting any such program that may allow people to stay in their homes. Last thing I want to do is see anybody moving to the Carolinas or Florida. So we'll see if you're interested and see if we can look for models elsewhere of how this is done successfully. And I hope we could develop some sort of proposal for your consideration on that.
Did the gentleman you spoke with go on the honor flight?
No, he didn't. He's been offered. As you may know, the honor flight is now moving to Korean and Vietnam War veterans. They offered that opportunity for just about every World War II veteran. He was offered it. It was a very long day. They start, as you know, at 6:30 in the morning and don't get back till 10 or 11 at night. Wonderful opportunity, but he just felt that his health wouldn't allow him that long day. But he was an incredibly bright and lucid individual, well into his 90s, obviously, and I really enjoyed meeting him.
Is he a permanent resident of the nursing home?
Meadowbrook now, that's right. He can see his house from Meadowbrook, though, and he wants to retain his house.
Because it's almost unheard of to be in a nursing home and still own a home. I don't know how one manages that. And I hope he's making use of the STAR exemption and the VA exemption, because that certainly contributes greatly to. Did you also discuss the high cost of nursing home care while you were there?
We did.
I mean, to have a home and to still, that's very unique.
We did, and we discussed, as I mentioned last week, the problem that industry is having is having enough caring individuals to work in these facilities. They have a really hard time staffing these facilities, and it's a growing problem. Thank you, that's all I have to offer.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on May 17th, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the City Clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, seconded by Councilor Quetzer. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the City of Plattsburgh for the week ending May 23rd, 2018 in the amount of $550,043.52 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, seconded by Councilor Rensel. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You see in your packet a number of reports that we offer each week. Are there any additional reports? I know Councilor Quetzer had discussed government strategy and city operations. Any additional reports, Tom?
Nothing, no. I guess refer to the committee meeting.
Thank you. Councilor Ensel for city infrastructure?
No report at this time. We do have a meeting coming up in 3 weeks.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
The only thing I left out of my presentation was to, beside thanking the council for all your hard work, was also to thank Mr. Marks and his department for all the data they've collected for us. Over the last few budget hearings, we've also had a lot of interest and input from some of our department heads, and that was most gratifying. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say some good words about the fine work those people have done. Thank you.
Thank you. Public safety, Councilor Dowdle.
Having had the meeting tonight, there's really no updates since actually half an hour ago. Some good things happening, and we hope to hear some updates as the monthly meetings progress. And thank you. And also I would like to thank Chief Lawless for bringing back the reports. Thank you.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Armstrong.
Yeah, there's still 2 vacancies, and the board recommended that, I guess there have been some recommendations that those be sent to you, and so you can expect those, and hopefully we'll have some appointments coming up.
Certainly. And Councilor McFarland, anything new on the MLD?
No updates yet.
Thank you. Resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Ensel and second by Councilor McFarland. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. I don't think there's any correspondence or recommendations at this time.
Resolved that the bills lodged by the Common Council for the week ending May 25th, 2018 in the amount of $2,474,631.13 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong and second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Hope all the attendees have had a chance to pick up a copy of the agenda. If there's any item on the agenda tonight that you would like to please address the council, this is your opportunity to come forward. We ask you to state your name, your address, and it's 5-minute time limit. This is agenda items only. We will have another opportunity to discuss items at the end of the meeting as well. Seeing none, let's continue.
Motion to remove item 7A from the table.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion.
I just think we're on version 7 at this point, and I don't think there have been any changes in the past week or two. I think it's been the same version, so I think with that being said, we could, after 2 weeks, we should probably take action on it.
Were you preparing a substitute code based on your models from elsewhere?
We just discussing the motion to take it off the table at this point? Okay. Yeah, we'll refer to that after discussion.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor McFarland?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council adopts the City of Plattsburgh Code of Conduct. Version 7, I should probably add.
Yes.
Moved by Councilor Ansel, second by
Well, you don't first.
Councilor Armstrong. Further discussion.
I just think at this point, I mean, based upon what we learned last week, that on Friday, that essentially the council has two roles, that to set the budget and that to legislate. I think, and I know Councilor Armstrong, you and Councilor Kretzer have been working on some things. I think that we should leave it up to the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee to, number one, decide if we do need a code of conduct, or if one should be established, and if this board agree, or if the committee thinks that one should be established, I think it should come from the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, because that is indeed one of our charges.
And Dean was very helpful when we met with him last week, you know, answered a lot of questions, brought a lot of clarification just in regards to the charter. So that was a very helpful meeting.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that we were able to, you know, I kind of go through the process of understanding that there are indeed interpretations of the charter, and with the questions that we posed in order to clarify what we felt our duties were. My takeaway from it was that we're looking at a strict interpretation of the charter, and I can live with that. And I understand clearly what boundaries we're going to be working within and accept that. And given the fact that one of the roles that we play is to develop policy, I felt strongly that we should take the reins with regard to this. We have been discussing various models and what form they might take. We haven't gotten to the point where we're ready to deliver anything specific at this point. However, I think that in terms of what results were needed immediately, that meeting Friday really served the purpose that I feel, you needed and that we needed. So we can proceed, and we will expedite this matter as a, through the committee structure and present as a proposal to the council.
Thank you.
I have a question. When is your next committee meeting?
Next week.
Is there a chance you could have something for us
We'll
by
have
then?
probably an outline.
Okay.
We've already, and Joshua and I are not the only people who have been reviewing other codes of conduct and codes of ethics. There's been some discussion, I've had some discussion with Counselor Ensel, and there are features of various codes that look promising to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't imagine that it will take much more work.
Yeah, but we're focused, and
Yes.
we're now kind of assembling a team of people that are going to be able to help us bring something into fruition.
That's right. And that's separate from the County Board of
Mm-hmm.
Ethics.
Absolutely. Okay.
Effort.
Is the plan to put this back on the table tonight and vote on it
Yeah.
whenever you are ready?
Well, I think we're
Well, no,
voting on it tonight.
We're voting on this version.
We're voting on version 7.
Right.
So, do you need to prioritize ethics, code of conduct, or are you gonna?
It's all.
I know they're two separate items, but they're both big items for.
Mm-hmm.
I think, taking recommendations from, the people that we're in discussions with, we now have a very clear, even though I feel like we had a pretty clear definition of the charter's meaning, in regards to these matters. But, through this ongoing process, we're going to find a lot of ways where, the two are kind of in a similar area, and also, differences, and if there needs to be, kind of separations.
Well, just to give you some kind of preview according to what my disposition is, I already distributed among you the Santa Clara affirmation of a code of conduct, which has a very broad and affirmational, that's the kind of language it uses. And I felt that was, when used in combination with the charter, a helpful instrument. Now, the code of the code of ethics that I've been looking at that mainly deals with conflicts of interest is more detailed. And as Dr. Moran said in kind of delineating the difference between the two, he said that codes of conducts were more like the Boy Scout oath, where you promise to be good, and that the code of ethics has more to do with, well, what do you do when people are bad? And so that's kind of what we're looking at.
And one question I would have when developing a code of conduct, since we have the New York State Freedom of Information law, I think that's going to play a big role in this. So would we need really to focus on a New York State guideline?
In our conversations with county representatives, they defer to the state ethics.
How about for the code of conduct?
I guess, that would be a different matter.
Right, because in this one that was being proposed about protect information, mark confidential, confidentiality, freedom of information laws. You'd have a code of conduct and you'd have the New York State code of freedom of information. Right, Robert Freeman. So you kind of put some people, or us, in the middle. So I think we would need to sort that out and gear it perhaps off a model within New York State. Just a thought.
Yeah, we've consulted the model from the comptroller's office.
Yes, okay. All right. Cool.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
No.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Dowdle?
No.
Counselor Ensel?
No.
Counselor McFarland?
No.
Counselor Kretzer?
No.
Motion to remove item 7B from the table.
Moved by,
Are we ready with this one?
Is this,
I thought we
I
were.
thought we did it.
Oh my
With-
God.
no, we tabled it,
We
and
needed
it
more
wasn't ready
information.
last week.
We got an email from Director
Yeah.
Miller.
Oh, yes.
Matt.
Yes, yes.
I spoke to the president of the league this afternoon. The email I sent out last night said that it would be best to put it off for scheduling reasons since the league is in full swing now, but he indicated a willingness to work their schedule around any work that the city would need to do. So sometime in the next 2 weeks, I need to set up a time with him and Department of Public Works to see exactly what work needs to be done, get an accurate cost to the city, and then bring it back before the council with full information.
So your recommendation is that it stay tabled until,
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Thank you, Matthew.
Can I just ask, how much time was spent on the backboard with you and coordinating and this and that? Is it
Probably,
Did it turn into a bigger than it looks project?
no, it,
No? Okay, good.
all told, probably less than 2 hours. at this
Okay,
point.
good, because it
Yeah.
looks like it was like
Right.
one hand, the other hand. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
so I presume this will remain on the table?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the contract with Animal Rescue and Welfare Services for feral cat control rescue adoption efforts in the city of Plattsburgh in the amount of $3,000. ARWS will provide an account of expenditures at year's end, as well as a report of the conditions of the feral cat population in the city.
Moved by Counselor Kretzer, second by Counselor Armstrong. Discussion?
It's good, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it's, we've been working with this, organization for the past few years. They've, provided an accurate accounting of, what they said they would do in relation to budget, so I'm comfortable.
my question is, they say they're going to provide us with figures at year's end. If this is the second or third year, second year that I know of, that that this request has come forward, I would like to see the numbers before we vote on it from this previous year. I don't know if Denise, do you, or Lil, you back there?
I actually presented the numbers in July.
Would you mind, thank you so much, just for the people at home.
I think it was the July meeting. I was actually here and indicated that we had done.
Well, that was a while ago, so.
Right.
Would you mind just reiterating?
No, I don't mind at all.
Thank you so much.
Last year, we were able, with the 1,500, to do 18 animals. And at this point, very honestly, we've already done 37 in the city of Plattsburgh since January 23rd at our cost, and that's well over the 3,000.
Where do when you capture the feral cats, and then,
I think they're in the 4th Ward, aren't they?
there's a lot of them, I can tell you that. Legally, you have to release them back. Where are they released?
Legally, that's what we need to do, and very honestly, in fairness to the cats, that's where they need to go, because they've already identified a food source or an area where it's safe. There are definitely still predators all in the city.
So they're released back to where they were captured?
Right, right.
Now, is all you do to neuter them, or do you give them rabies shots or anything?
They're neutered. They receive a combo vaccination that covers panleukopenia, which is distemper. They receive a vaccination for a variety of upper respiratory infections that can sometimes plague the cat population, and they receive a rabies vaccination. They're also dewormed when they're there, in addition to being spayed or neutered.
And are any adopted, or are you just
Oh my
always?
goodness, yes. I actually had thought about trying to pull together the exact number of animals that we have actually pulled from the city. Just this week, I can tell you that I took 4 from Elm Street. I took 3 from Lafayette this morning. So, I mean, we're pulling from the area. Anyone who comes out, it comes into a trap and they're deemed to be completely feral, they don't want to have any contact with humans, it's pretty easy to identify, they need to go back. But if we believe that there's any way to socialize them, we put them into a foster home, and they're worked with there, and then they're adopted out.
How do you trap them?
Have a heart trap.
I'm sorry, say that
Have a
one more
heart
time.
Have a
traps.
heart.
It doesn't injure them, they go in, but then they're not able to get out until they're collected.
But
There's a trigger that they step on, and when they step on it, the door slams behind them.
But releasing them back still does not alleviate the nuisance problem that is created with,
Well, with reproduction, as far as,
but I mean, there's still,
Right.
there's no reproduction,
and-
but there's still the nuisance problem
But there-
created with excrement and everything else.
It's true, but there are less of them.
Within the neighbors.
There are less of them because of these
I think
adoptions.
I know the area that you're referring to, and I would just like to say that we have pulled 15 from there.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Have there been any
And-
adoptions that have
well-
happened?
Well, let me go back though. Last year, we took 10 that were young enough that we could do something with, and they have all been adopted. This year, we have spayed or neutered 15 from the area. I would tell you that 2 additional cats were very pregnant. And we pulled them. They both had 4 kittens. So let's think in terms of that cat may end up having to go back there, or those 2, but there are 8 kittens that would have been there that will not be going back. In addition to that, there are some kittens that have been born there that I'm picking up on Monday. So while I know that you'd like to see them gone, it just doesn't work that way.
And is that from kind of best practices of how things are done
Right.
throughout the country? Well, I think, this was really a grassroots initiative that you helped to start, and you're providing such a valuable service to the city. The fact that you're willing to take the time and endanger yourself, it's really wonderful work. Thank you.
We're doing it not only with the city, I mean, we're not getting any money from anyone else, but that's the next thing on my agenda. But we have taken in 157 cats that were deemed to be feral, that have been spayed or neutered, they've been vaccinated, and they've been returned to the area, never to reproduce again. So, I mean, that's huge. And the problem is still big out there. But I don't think that we're dealing with as many colonies as we are strays. And that's where I think we can get the benefit of.
And if they're strays, they can be socialized.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you.
Is there one particular vet that you deal with? I mean, how
Yes.
do you, okay.
We deal with the Red Fern Spay Neuter Clinic.
Okay, and in my questioning with the Clinton County Health Department Environmental Services, they indicated cats are considered property. So when they're trapped, the owner needs to be found before they can be neutered.
If they can be
How is-
identified.
How is any attempts, I realize they're kind of fruitless, but is there a mandate or something that you would need to try to find? What if somebody's cat was just loose and somehow it trapped and was taken and?
I mean, we post all of our animals that we have taken in. I'm not sure exactly how.
If there's a collar and a name tag and a phone number, it's easy.
Right, exactly.
But then they wouldn't be feral.
Right, fair enough.
But in terms of truly feral cats, they probably don't belong to anyone. I think the bulk of the stray population in this town, or in this city, belonged to someone at one point.
Right, but if there's a cat roaming without a collar, because there's an argument against putting a collar on a cat. There's an argument for it, because what would determine that it isn't just somebody's pet that got into your trap, and off it went, it got neutered, and you come home?
Well, first of all, one of the things that we do on a regular basis, there are a variety of websites, one called Adirondack Pets Lost and Found. People constantly post there if they've lost a dog, if they've lost a cat. I've actually been instrumental in getting 2 cats back to their homes, not because we had them, but because someone else had contacted us, and it made sense that it was kind of a circle that was the cat. But we check them on a daily basis, so.
So any of those that are actually property and they come back, it's just like they've had a spa day.
I mean, I've had.
Spay day.
Spay day.
In 3 years of being at PetSmart, I've had 2 people who have come forth and said, that's my cat. And one person almost had me convinced, but she said the cat was neutered and it wasn't, so clearly it wasn't the same cat. And the other one was just totally out of the area.
Okay, and are there any colonies maintained on non-private property? Are there any maintained on a public property?
The last time I went to Adirondack Lane, that was no fair, that colony in Adirondack Lane, which is city property. That was last year with Beck.
Are you?
Is it gone?
I'm wondering, are you referring to the Newman Center?
No.
No?
I'm just
Okay.
wondering, because I know after we had so much discussion last year, people came forward identifying colonies. And I think there was more than people realized. And I'm just wondering if any were not on private property.
The only true colonies that I would call colonies that I'm aware of in the city is the Newman Center, and I work personally with feeding that colony every day. And there's a colony that's associated with Plattsburgh, which is
Right, I
on
think I read
White
that.
Street,
Mhm.
and they're really well maintained. In addition to that, I think it's a few here and a few there. I mean, someone on my street feeds two.
Mhm.
I don't call it a colony.
Does that then make that person responsible for vaccination because they feed them?
I think they would say that, yeah.
So if there's an issue with that cat that, say, had rabies, would that person be liable?
I think if you do some research on cat rabies, there's a recent case that's just come up in Vermont, but a few years ago I checked to see what the New York State rate was, and there hadn't been one in over 60 years.
Because there's other health concerns beyond rabies with cats.
I mean, FELV, FIV, we do test cats. Both can actually live for an extended period of time. So.
All right.
I have a question. You're doing this now absent any finance from the city, right? Who's paying for all this activity?
Well, we have, when we're actually able to adopt a cat out, we charge an adoption fee, and we adopt all of our cats out through PetSmart. In addition to the adoption fee, PetSmart has been paying us $10 for each cat that gets adopted. We also maintain a thrift store on Bridge Street, which does quite well for us.
So do you need this $3,000 from the city in order to continue to operate?
Do you consider that every cat that lives in the city belongs to ARWS?
Pardon me, I don't understand the question.
I mean, they're not really our cats either, so we're just asking for help in order to be able to help them.
Is this a budgeted expense this year?
Well, I was going to refer, because we deferred it for this point in conversation during the public committee about the budgeting item. I think it was cut in half, was it? Wasn't the request once for 3,000? It went to 1,500.
Now it's 1,500.
It went to 1,500.
It went to 1,500.
It was 1,500 last year, we were asking
For
for
3,000.
3,000 because the problem is so monumental, we're making such a difference.
But was the request once 3,000 and we went to 1,500?
No.
Or the request
No,
was?
it was
Okay. All right.
1,500. They're doubling the request.
Okay, all right. Good.
So I'm wondering where the money's gonna come from.
So, I'll speak to your question, Counselor. This is not a budgeted expense. If I can offer comment, while I understand the worthiness of this cause and it is noble, I would recommend that you vote no, only from the standpoint that it is not budgeted. It wouldn't be financially responsible to the taxpayers without full scope of the year if we have expenses that exceed our budgeted items. The taxpayers would end up falling short. So that would be my recommendation.
Last year, I think the money came from the budget for dog control.
That is a budgeted expense, at least the 1,500. That is, if it's out of the animal budget, and I think the police, because I reviewed this with Mr. Marcus and the mayor. At least 1,500 of it.
That was not budgeted under that item last year, but 1,500 was taken from the cost in that line.
So it's still not, so it's still not budgeted this year.
All right, I guess I misspoke in terms of the budget. I just meant that that's where I thought the money came from last year. I mean, I understand the budget concerns, we all live with them, and I think, I mean, did we spend all of the money for dog control last year?
I'd have to look and let you know.
I don't know, personally, I think cats just are a really underserved population that deserve more, but.
We'll get that information from Mr. Marks.
Okay.
And find out, last year, just in regards to what the actuals were.
I disagree with that.
But thank you so much.
Okay, we'll keep doing it if you're not going to, but it is a worthy cause.
That
and it's
is.
something that really should be done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Wait, so Richard, is 1,500 budget for this year?
No.
Okay.
What happened last year is there was a budget for animal control expenses, which is supposed to provide for care for stray animals at the police place, for veterinarians. And 1,500 was taken out of that for this purpose last year. But this was not a budget item last year, 1,500, and it's not budgeted this year for 3,000.
Okay, so then the question is, how much have we spent of that budget? You're saying that we'll fall short.
No.
No?
It is,
Possible.
it is speculation at
It's
this point
speculation,
to know
okay.
what we
True.
will actually spend.
But
Right.
you don't know what we spent last year in
I
the
don't have that number
actuals?
in front of me.
Right.
I'm not sure.
So we need the trends,
Right.
I think, before, the budget trends.
So right, I mean, to fall in line with what you're gonna approve, hopefully tonight, this 5-year budget plan, if it's a consideration that you wish to take on,
Put it in
I would
next
just
year.
suggest budget for it, if it is enough of a concern.
However, if it shows
It-
from the past 3 years, is that what you were gonna say?
That there's been some left over, perhaps there's some discretion that we
There probably
can
should be some
take.
else.
So
Right.
then, are we able to table it?
I think we can.
I'll make the motion if it's the
Okay.
appropriate time to table.
Table,
Just
Counselor
for further
Presser, second
information.
by Counselor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Table.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves the consulting and engineering design services contract for the downtown streetscape and riverfront access design project of the Downtown Revitalization Initiative be awarded to Saratoga Associates Landscape Architects, Engineers, and Planners, P&C. Payment for the contract will be made using funds included in the DRI grant.
By Counselor Presser, second by Counselor Renzel. Discussion?
Would it be possible, Matt, would you be able to come up and talk on this? Just
Yes.
kind of give a brief history, kind of synopsis of how we have arisen here.
So the downtown streetscape and riverfront access projects were originally two separate projects under the DRI. At the request of the city, they were combined into one project. A RFP for design and engineering services was released in January, I believe. RFPs were due at the end of February. There was a prolonged review process. 5 review committee members were recruited. There was an initial review process based on the rubric that was included in the RFP out of a 100-point scale. The 3 highest scoring, average highest scoring firms were invited to attend final video conference interviews. After those interviews, the review committee members were asked to submit their preference in order, first, second, third choice. And the 4 committee members who submitted final scores were unanimous in their choice of the most appropriate firm. Yep.
I'd just like to say that we use the Saratoga Associates with the local waterfront revitalization completion grant of the grant, and they were delivered satisfactory results. The only thing that I wish they had done differently, and I don't know if it's part of the scope of this, will any public input be part of what they do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's 2 rounds of public input built into the RFP.
Right, so I just noticed that really that aspect of public input in the previous contract didn't come until kind of the end, where they unveiled their recommendations to the public, and I hope that we can recruit more public input at the front of the process.
Yeah, I believe the recommended order of tasks was to assess the existing literature and studies on the project space. Then there's a first round of public input, and then an initial design, and then after that's released, a second round of public input.
Okay.
So.
So if this is approved, what will they start doing immediately?
We'll need to negotiate a contract with Saratoga, and then the timeline that they proposed was 20 months, I believe, until the end of construction. So there will be a project kickoff meeting, the formulation of a project steering committee, and then initial meetings with city personnel to provide them with the requisite studies and information on the project sites, and then move into the public outreach section of the project.
So do they have projects in mind, or are they doing research on that still?
That would be part of the public outreach and discussions with city personnel.
And design will come from that.
And design will come from that, yeah.
And this is what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what they do.
They've done
And
good
I'm not
work.
sure if I'm allowed, but may I suggest a amendment to the resolution that would say, this award is granted pursuant to the terms of the DRI grant and the request for proposals issued for this project?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have it written down for Beth, or could you?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have to read it.
Oh, okay. This award is made pursuant to the terms of the DRI grant and the request for proposals issued for this project.
I'll make that motion to amend.
Hold on.
I second.
The DRI grant and the request for proposals issued for this project.
Motion to amend.
Moved by
Well, I
Councilor
don't think-
McFarland, second by Councilor Ansel. All in favor of amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Back to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Matthew.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh has prepared and approved a 5-year budget plan commencing on January 1st, 2019, which will be presented to the Mayor of the City of Plattsburgh for use in preparing the 2019 Mayor's budget.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion.
Just wanted to ask the council if you had any questions about the proposed 5-year plan, or suggestions, or anything at all that we need to discuss before we vote on this tonight.
Thanks for all the work.
Yeah, I was
It's
just
a,
about
it's
to
a work
say
in
that.
progress, we understand, so
I was
this
gonna,
is.
I was gonna say, Mike, you were gracious in thanking everyone else, but you should also.
Thank you, thank you. It just occurred to me, this is a very large pill to swallow every year. And perhaps if we break it up into small components that we can all understand, that it makes it a lot easier. And therefore, this was very much an educational experience for me as well. And I hope that as a result of this exercise, all of you feel more comfortable with our budget going forward and understand all the components. But if you ever have any questions at all, ask Mr. Marks, okay?
Okay, yeah. And a huge
But you have to ask the mayor first.
Right, get the
And a
mayor's
huge thank you to Richard Marks and his whole department for just constantly evolving with the process.
And I do have a question for Richard Marks, if I may. In the summary of the budgetary structural imbalance that we had prepared some time ago, recommendations for long-range planning, strategic planning. Richard Marks estimates $500,000 in savings if we were to put all employees on the same time and attendance system.
Oh.
What is
That
that?
was done in 2008, and that was an opportunity cost,
Right?
if you know what I mean.
And did opportunity knock only the one time, or did opportunity only knock once, or what happened?
Nothing was done.
Okay.
No, and what the point of that was the time being spent on that was that value at that time, $400,000 to $500,000 was the estimate. So that time could have been used for something else. In other words, it's an opportunity cost.
But this indication, this summary is not from 2008 though, but that was brought forward,
That's when I did the numbers on it originally.
and you again presented that?
No, I haven't updated it since then. But back then, that's how much time was being spent on what we defined as doing payroll in the outside departments from the finance office.
What are we talking about right now? This is when we have some departments on weekly payroll and some on bi-weekly payroll?
No, it's maintaining payroll records, payroll accounting, benefit accounting, ancillary spreadsheets outside of the city's financial system, and the time that everybody has to take to do that. So that was the estimate back then because there was a lot of work being done. I'd have to look at it again to see how much time is being spent on it now. So it's done a long time ago.
All right. Thank you.
One other thing I'd like to say is that the 5-year plan that you will vote on tonight and hopefully approve is going to be version number 1. Last year in 2018, or 2017, I'm sorry, 2017, we had 17 revisions to our plan. This year, I would like for the council to be a little more involved in those changes and to get your consensus on any changes to the 5-year plan going forward. It is your plan, so we'll make an extra effort to do that going forward. Thank you.
And as we've learned lately, the big buzzword was interpretation when it came to the charter and different things. Now it seems the word is assumptions, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, it's all, yes.
Yes.
All right.
That brings up a good point.
But it is assumptions, and that's really all it
That's what a
can
budget
be.
is based on.
Right, assumptions.
Assumptions should be organic and they should be
Yep.
subject to scrutiny going forward.
And,
Absolutely.
and should be tested by the use of data.
Right.
So,
Well, I think it gets tested every day.
well,
I mean,
yeah, I guess
Something,
you're right.
every day it gets
Yeah.
tested. Okay. That's just an assumption. Okay.
Smart aleck.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
I believe there is no travel request at this time. Any resolutions for initial consideration? I do have one item for new business. The mayor hands down the appointment of Tara Powers for the position of Promotions and Special Events Coordinator, Level 4 Manager Compensation, Level 3 Benefits Policy, salary set at $48,000 for a minimum of 40 hours per week in the Community Development Office, effective May 29th, 2018. Moved by Councilor Armstrong, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion.
The salary was established at 48,000 and established at that how?
Based on the incumbent salary, equivalent to the incumbent salary.
Okay, is there any civil service input into that salary or?
No, civil service is uninterested in salary so long as the salary is less than the person they're reporting to.
Okay.
And civil service, as you know, has been a very laborious process to go through a long list of candidates and have them vetted through civil service. Civil service will, of course, wait till your final affirmation by appointment to do the final work, but they've indicated this candidate meets their criteria.
And this is a permanent?
It is. Should be
Provisional?
hired provisionally because there's no current list of eligible candidates otherwise. She would have to take the next
Oh, all right,
exam.
okay, I thought it was coming off the list, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So that would mean the list has been exhausted.
The list has been exhausted. We're down to less than 3 candidates, which actually allows us to then hire off of the list under the provision that they then have to write the next exam when it's set. And score within the top 3, by the way. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Any other new business or additional council reports?
I'd like to ask on new business, I understand the town now has litigation against us?
That's correct.
And is that a new development, or?
Um,
I heard it on the radio, that's why I'm asking.
It's a development in the response to our concerns over the pattern of payments from Falcon Seaboard. Their contention is that they signed the 1992 agreement with the city under duress.
So,
And their suit is for $1.5 million.
just because we did that to them, or I don't understand, where do they get that number?
I can't really.
Okay.
I can't really.
Okay.
respond to it.
So then the legal fees for that will incur,
It's all the same package.
it is? Because I know we had a bill from Stafford and Owens for January and February of a little over 10,000, but I haven't seen anything for March and April. Would there be a billing for March and April to that firm?
It'd be much smaller. As you know, in January and February, we retained them to complete research and try to determine what happened and collect the documents we needed. And they did that in December and January, analyzed that data in February. Since then, they have overseen depositions or more fact gathering, overseeing the work of the town's lawyers.
And some of our council has taken on some of the responsibilities that.
Correct, as much as possible.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further new business or council reports?
Oh, I have a question. Do we, is there anything new with the bridge going on?
No, I've conveyed the wishes of our council to the superintendent for the school district to say that we're very much looking forward to working on an arrangement with them, and that the sense of the council was that we can come up with a solution that'll work best for both their students and for the residents. As we discussed, at this point he said he would have his lawyers work out a contract with our lawyers, and I don't believe that's occurred yet, but we stand willing to do that at any time. Betty Little has reaffirmed that she still has money available to assist in this as well.
Speaking of bridges, has there been any movement on the Saranac River Trail Bridge project?
I don't know if any representative can speak to that at this point. I know we are still having ongoing discussions on that.
Any chance we could see a bridge there this year?
Which one?
There's two?
One to Pine
I prefer the one near my house, but
They're kind of a two-bridge package,
Yeah, it is.
otherwise
It's a
they're
two-bridge.
a bridge to nowhere.
Right. Walk in a circle and go back across, right.
I actually had a question for Mr. Brody. This afternoon, actually, I had a constituent ask me if there are any plans to do anything with the walkways in down at Penfield Park, because they were walking and I guess there's a buckle in one of the paths or something where some of the macadam has come up and cracked and is buckled up, and they twisted their ankle while they were walking their dog.
I'm aware of it, I'll check it out.
Okay, thank you.
And I have one, speaking of hirings, did the deputy chamberlain, is that item remain open? Are we under, is the process for that being pursued?
There's
Or chartered?
currently no list or exam for deputy chamberlain. The chamberlain's office has done a number of staff hires. We're in the process of doing some staff hires to fulfill those roles and duties, and at a later time they will consider how that might translate into a deputy chamberlain position. But currently they've come up with a plan to meet their needs within their budget.
Does that require a change in the charter? Because the charter says we shall have a deputy chamberlain.
Just as in, we shall have a police chief, but as you know, we go for periods without police chiefs on an interim basis. So I don't believe there's any violation of, we haven't struck from our organizational chart a deputy chamberlain that's just currently unfilled.
But would you have an interim deputy chamberlain? Could that title be given, and if a person, I mean, I'm just saying, if a person is doing those job duties, you could have technically, if the charter says that you need a deputy chamberlain, you would still have an interim deputy chamberlain. They could go through the same process with the test taking.
I can work with the chamberlain to see if we could have somebody who would act as a deputy chamberlain in the absence of a chamberlain.
I just say it to go along with the charter.
Mm-hmm.
Other reports, questions, business? Seeing none, this is now an opportunity for the public to please come and address the council on any issue of mutual concern. Please again state your name, your address, and please confine yourself to the 5-minute limit.
My name is Joel Bogensberger. I'm from Old Avenue. I just came in. I'd be remiss. I'm glad to hear that you guys are moving forward on this ethics committee. But I was already planning on coming here to speak about it, and I feel I still need to speak about it. It's ironic that you mentioned that there shall be a deputy chamberlain. In Chapter 53 of the Charter, there shall be a board of ethics. Over a year ago, I requested a board of ethics review. Over a year, multiple times, to all of you up here, except for Mrs. Carlin. And I've been completely ignored. I've reported to you that there were crimes, ethics violations, a whole number of things. And I've asked for a review by the Board of Ethics, and nothing has happened for over a year. Now you're working on it, but the charter still says there shall be a Board of Ethics. And an employee with a written request, they will review and give a recommendation. Over a year. I'm tremendously disappointed, but at the same time, I'm glad to hear that you're working on it. And while you're still working on it, doesn't mean there should not be a Board of Ethics established, because the charter already dictates how it's done. The mayor appoints, the council approves if they like the choices. It's the only time you can trump the mayor's choices. It's all right there in black and white. Chapter 52, Chapter 53. I've reported violations from the charter, and like I said, state law, city policy, very serious stuff. And I've been ignored. I just wanted to tell you that I'm disappointed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. I think those are valid points. I believe you have 3 names. I would be perfectly willing to appoint those people right now. I've brought this issue up a number of times as well, and I do believe there is a consensus on at least 3 names if you're willing to consider. I think all these points are well taken. But you also have another timeline and would like to perhaps reconstruct it. I respect that as well. But I think his points are well taken.
What are you asking? I'm sorry. Are you asking?
I'm willing to put forward the 3 names that you brought to me immediately if you are willing to consider them.
I'd like a little time for further discussion, either now or, after, getting a little more information.
Well, here's the thing. I will accept the criticism of Mr. Bogensberg, and there's no predicting how long it will take for the other mechanism to be put into place. We have suggested 3 names. I think we can have this as a resolution on next week's agenda and put that into place to act in the meantime. I think that
And we can work this
to
week.
do otherwise would
And we'll work
be
this week on it.
shameful. Yeah.
Would there, or is there an existing ethics code, or?
There is,
There is.
and it's first since 1970 that I know of.
Could we have an opportunity to see the resumes of these people? Or at least a bio or something, so we know who
Absolutely.
we're voting for or against?
Probably a week's time will be adequate.
Yeah, pretty easy to.
Okay. That'll help us.
And I would like to review what council provided to us beyond just appointing the 3 members or naming the 3 members. There was more information that we would need to gather and implement, or we could proceed. I would just need to review that. There was a subsequent.
I'm at a loss.
There was a
Sorry.
subsequent email from council on what it would take to formulate.
Okay. Oh,
the
from
ethics. Yes.
council?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd also like to say that I appreciate the work that Rochelle and Josh have done as part of the Strategy and Governance Committee, I believe,
you.
to move this forward. And your idea of having a county-wide agency to do this, I think, is an excellent idea. It speaks to the need to share services. I like that approach. And I hope you will continue to go forward with that.
Thanks.
Excellent, excellent idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments at this time?
Public comments.
Anybody? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Dowdle, seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
Mayor, can you sign?
Yep.